A Flash You Can't Forget by ranidaee. Summary. When he woke up, Atsushi could swear he was back at the orphanage, in that wretched place Shibusawa worked on. All of his assumptions were broken when Dazai showed up. Before we begin, trigger warnings will be provided in the description as well as the first comment. Please check them out for any potential triggers and stay safe. The shining of the lights were bright, hurting the eyes of whoever made the decision to look up. They flicked in a way so subtle only someone who had been in contact with the clarity for a long time would see it. That was always what Atsushi noticed the most. The flickering, the intensity, the power these lights gave. But it's not like the harsh illuminations weren't to be expected. Upon opening his eyes and being met with such brightness, the boy didn't need to think twice to come to the conclusion of where he currently was. The laboratory. That cursed room, with molded walls and the only possible source of sunlight being a small, decrepit window, narrow and high up, almost touching the ceiling. The place was no notable laboratory. Almost all of the orphanage didn't even know it was a thing, having just a few select people being trustworthy enough to hold such a secret. But it didn't matter, for the reason that place existed wasn't worthy of high quality. Atsushi feared that place. He also feared the man associated with it. For some time, the boy thought his ragged memories of that ambience were just the aftermath of a long episode of hallucinations. They didn't connect with each other. They didn't make sense. Bits and pieces, almost lost in the ocean of the ability holder's mind. Atsushi worried about so many things on the daily. Does he deserve the meal he was given? Had he done something really worthy for that? Does he deserve all the love his new family gives him? And that flow of thoughts, although strong like a river's current, still clung sometimes to images and memories of that white long-haired man and his obsession with the orphan for God knows what reason. But now Atsushi could remember the full picture of the events he'd passed through. After Fyodor brought back that crazy, lunatic person, Shibusawa, that was his name, Atsushi had come to accept Byako and had unlocked some not-so-heartwarming memories. Now Atsushi remembers the times where he was pushed by the ear or the arm by the orphanage headmaster to the laboratory. Shibusawa Dono, the man would call upon getting in the front of the door. The researcher would just open it, thank the other, and guide little Atsushi with a hand on his upper back. Words were rarely needed at those moments. Both men knew what the procedure was. The kid didn't. He never knew what would happen that day. Tatsuhiko Shibusawa. He was a wealthy man. He had his contacts. So if he wanted something, it was easy to guess he'd be getting it. And that's why he had been accommodated at the orphanage for some months already. Atsushi, at the time, didn't get it. Nobody told him what his visits were about, but almost no one knew about his stay too. The kid's mind had come to the conclusion it was for some type of research, maybe for an illness. The orphanage superiors always told him he was intrinsically bad, that he was rotten, so maybe he was the best research material one could get to analyze it. The picture of the pool of blood was still burned onto his brain. The smell of iron, the velvet color slowly spreading at the cement floor, the corpse on the center, bleeding. God, so much blood. And the smell, it was nauseating. Where did it come from? What happened? Why was Shibusawa-san's corpse staining the floor with crimson? How had he gained such harsh gashes on his skull? Atsushi didn't understand it. No matter how much he tried, he didn't understand it. Minutes ago, he was still tied to that electric chair. Did he die? Did Atsushi die and that was his afterlife? The scene for the rest of eternity? To show him what he truly was? An incarnation of sin? Was he stuck here? Atsushi did not remember the outcome. He did not remember how the headmaster entered the room and saw the horrid scene, with that pest he had responsibility upon on his knees, unresponsive, no matter what the man did to try to bring the cursed child back to the present. Atsushi had a vague idea of how the preceding month was, though. In the sparse time he'd come back to reality, just to be met with darkness, cold, and the feeling of metal closed on his wrists, neck, and heels. Despite the pure black of the room he was kept in, he could still see the pool of blood flowing and getting bigger. He could still feel the blood reaching his legs on the ground and staining the rags he had to call clothes. Even after the Apple suicide case, Atsushi's brain could not gather the energy to unlock these sections of blocked memories yet. Now he knew his hands, his claws, were the reason for the researcher's death. He had been pushed out of his limit. Byakko had taken hold of his instincts out of means of protection. Technically, it wasn't Atsushi who killed Shibusawa. It was his ability. But the wound had been made by his own hands. He was dead. Tatsuhiko Shibusawa is now a dead man. The orphanage director had had the same fate too. So why was Atsushi stuck back here, in this decrepit room with harsh lights? He shouldn't be here. Why was he here again? He didn't understand what was happening. Atsushi was confused. His head could not wrap around anything but the memories that room came with. And he was sure he was there again. The lights gave it away. Even with his eyes closed, he still noticed the flicker. He still felt the red liquid touching his skin. He still felt the presence of all the torture methods scattered around the room, once used in a vain attempt of taking Atsushi's ability from him. Why was he here? Please, he did not want to be in that place again. Atsushi felt the panic setting in. His body trembled like a dog during New Year's Eve. He could not place a name for anything that his eyes tried to focus on, nor did he feel like the owner of his own body. Amidst the horrid fear his body answered upon, strangled murmurs escaped the boy's mouth, asking, begging, praying to someone he wasn't even sure existed to please get him out of this place. Please, I don't want to be here. Please, help. Upon seeing Atsushi fall flat on his side, Dazai could already deduce the evening would not go as smooth as he hoped to. The two of them were called to investigate a shady murder case that the police officers assigned to solve it apparently were incapable enough of doing it on their own. Kunikida had been pissed upon receiving this type of job again. He always rambled when given the opportunity about how bad the police did their work. After committing so many petty crimes during his teen years in the mafia and getting away with it way too easily on account of an incompetent police officer, Dazai could for sure agree with his co-worker's opinion. But a job is a job, and because the blonde man had already somewhere to go, today only the mentor and his pupil would be responsible for representing the armed detective agency on the crime scene. Said scene turned out to be really boring. Upon analyzing the information given to the detectives and seeing the body, it was pretty obvious the reason behind the manslaughter had connections with a drug trafficking ring. And even though Dazai was counting the seconds to be able to say his job was done, something just wasn't right. The two officers assigned to the case made some rookie mistakes while handling the body, making some information not viable anymore. They also had been acting stiff, like they had a stick up their asses. The brunette gave a quiet laugh after thinking that, not to mention the location where the crime was committed, an abandoned warehouse that years ago was used as a base by a criminal group. Funny thing, if Dazai remembers correctly, said group was composed of corrupt cops. The government had taken care of them pretty quickly when the organization was discovered. The group was said to be ruptured after that, but the chances of someone trying to recreate something alike weren't zero. Exactly why is that? Dazai wasn't sure. Some people become blind of reason and moral upon the promise of money and power, and that could be happening right now, so he had to be careful. Being lost in the scope of his mind for mere seconds was proven enough for the case to take a harsh turn, as Dazai didn't notice his mistake until it was a bit too late. While the ex-mafioso thought, the quote-unquote cops accompanied Atsushi to another room. Dazai took hold of his gun, one he was only allowed to have during cases like this, where conflicts have a higher chance of happening. Kunikida always took it away from Dazai the moment they're out of the case. Boring. Entering into the connected room, he could see that the posture the were-tiger took already spoke of distrust with the man, the other one nowhere to be seen, so some kind of plan had been going on. "Mind telling us what all of this is about, officer?" the ex-mafioso questioned in a calm yet firm tone. "Nothing you should worry about, sir. I was talking with Nakajima-san about some of his previous cases." The officer responded in that typical, annoying tone cops use minutes before locking you up with their handcuffs. The man now looked to be more stiff. He was tense, probably trying to hide something. And what would it be? A shift of movement was suddenly heard in the room, followed by Atsushi screaming and Dazai barely deviating from something being thrown at him. He quickly gained his composure and stanced himself up for defense, looking back in time to see his mentee convulsing, a line connecting his body to a little machine the other man was holding. A taser. The cop did not take his finger off its trigger until the white-haired boy had fallen to the ground. Dazai had to act fast. 1 against 2 was already a hard fight, though he couldn't locate the second guy. Skillful, he had no problem shooting the corrupt officer, aiming for the leg and getting it right. Dazai then ran towards him and handcuffed the man. The wound wasn't bad enough to kill quickly. "I think it's best to leave the unnecessary part. Where is your other friend and how many more of you are here?" Dazai grabbed the other guy by the collar and pointed his gun to the side of his head. The officer, a young blonde man, while hissing in pain, gave the information that the other guy was supposed to be there too, but ran towards the exit when Dazai showed up, so only the 3 of them were in there. Atsushi was still out of it, so the brunette called Kunikida to help carry the orphan to Yosono, then called the police to come take the guy. They reached the place at the same time, coincidentally. The ex-mafioso held Atsushi in his arms ever so carefully, as if the boy were made of glass, and carried him to Kunikida's car while the blonde quickly talked with the real, trusted, police officers. Atsushi was really light, Dazai realized. He'd have to have a talk with Dr. Yosono about this. They put him in a cot at the agency, and Dazai decided to keep an eye on Atsushi while he didn't wake up. After an hour or 2, though, he made a quick escape out of the infirmary to take a breath. Although he wanted to keep an eye on his mentee, sometimes bad memories of antiseptics and sterile rooms made it difficult to keep his lungs working right. And of course, the moment Dazai gets out of Atsushi's side, something wrong happens. Dazai enters the infirmary, hearing nothing but panicky gasps and murmurs begging for help. Atsushi had woken up in the middle of a panic attack. "Out! Please!" he murmured, gasps for air interrupting his speech. I'm sorry. He had made himself as small as possible, every muscle tensed. "I don't want to be here," was whispered so low, so fast, Dazai almost didn't understand what the boy had said. Dazai sprinted to the side where Atsushi laid. "Atsushi? Hey, Atsushi, can you hear me?" After considering for a second, he placed one of his hands on the boy's upper arm. "You're at the agency, Atsushi. Everything's alright." The other responded with a stronger gasp, followed by a whine. "Good, he can hear me," the bandaged man thought. "Atsushi, can you open your eyes? I need you to open your eyes for me, kid." He moved his hand to Atsushi's cheek in a comforting manner. Atsushi reluctantly opened his eyes for some seconds, and Dazai put himself in his line of vision. "Dazai?" A weak, uncertain voice escaped the younger's mouth. "Yes, Atsushi-kun, it's me. You are at the agency right now, at the infirmary." Realization seemed to reach Atsushi's eyes. He looked around a little, like he'd never seen the room before, then looked at his mentor's face, who showed obvious concern. The boy proceeded to completely crumple, lips wobbling and fat tears running out of his eyes. The ex-mafioso, upon seeing such emotions coming from someone so dear to him, opened his arms, welcoming the younger to a hug. His mentee did not hesitate, hugging him and putting his forehead under the older's chin. Atsushi felt so scared. He thought he was there again. He thought he'd have to pass through everything he had passed for a second time. He felt hopeless, like a scalding magma ball had taken place of his internal organs. But then Dazai showed up and saved him from there. Atsushi couldn't be more relieved. His younger self could only dream of having someone who'd save him from such a terrible nightmare. The two stayed like that for a good half hour. It was only when Kunikida entered the infirmary to check if they were okay that they separated. While Atsushi went to the bathroom to clean his mess of a face, Kunikida demanded an explanation that, honestly, Dazai didn't have. They could only assume the worst coming from their co-worker's childhood. Maybe Kunikida could talk with him about it at some later date. Now, though, Atsushi was visibly exhausted. His panic attack had taken his energy. He tried to sit back on his desk and work, but his superiors didn't let him, saying he was free for today and could go back to his dorm to rest. Man, Atsushi angst is always so personal to me. I feel so maternal towards that boy, and the scene with him having flashbacks was just gut-wrenching. Also, Dazai comforting him is a neat dynamic that I wish we get to see more of it in canon. God, I miss their interactions so bad. So, funny story, I kinda sent out a cry for help on Tumblr a couple of days ago, stating that this past week, 2 out of maybe 30 authors actually responded to me, and I was running out of fics to Podfic quickly. Cue ranidaee rushing to save the day. They recommended 2 of their fics during the AO3 shutdown, but the moment the site was up again and I read them, this fic in particular blew me away for how vivid and impactful its descriptions were. I proceeded to record and edit it in record time. So everyone, let's all thank ranidaee for giving me permission to podfic this. I hope you enjoyed listening to this as much as I've enjoyed reading your lovely work. And thank you, dear listeners, for watching. If you'd like to request any fics, YouTube community tabs are now open for you to post, aside from Tumblr. And if you'd like to show more support, I'm available on Ko-fi, and Super Thanks is now available. Hope you have a great week. Till next time.